You know, a lot of people are saying that Donald Trump is racist. A lot of people are thinking that. It's something I'm looking at. I'm looking at a lot of things. And some other people are saying that it's just the crooked liberal media trying to discredit him. But is it? Let's find out. But first, a word from a genuine and very real Trump supporter.
Hello there, boys and girls. My name is Trumpy the Transvestite, and I'm here to sing his song about a little thing called love. This one goes out to Charlie.
So if you Google Donald Trump racism, you get a bunch of articles from liberal media, sites like Slate and Huffington Post. These articles all mention the same evidence of Trump's racism. There's a series of allegations of racial discrimination in his casinos and hotels, his reluctance to distance himself from white supremacists, his conspiracy theorizing about Obama's nationality, his tendency to phrase things like a racist grandpa, his encouragement of violence toward minority protesters, and of course his persistent stereotyping of Jews and blacks and Mexicans and Asians and Indians. All this sketches a picture of a man who is happy to exploit racism for political gain. But if I'm going to convince people that Trump personally holds racist beliefs, I'm going to need to present the kind of rigorous evidence and logic demanded by internet rationalist skeptics with furry avatars or beards. Why do these guys all have beards? I guess they're trying to communicate a message, like, thanks to the testosterone lozenge in my rectum, my thicket of pubes is at least as robust as my face merkin. My face is nothing like that. It's smooth and pure. Like a boy's face, like a doll's face. Actually, let's not psychoanalyze this too much. I don't think any of us benefit from the internet poking around too much in our psyches. In fact, don't look at me. Don't. Now, where was I? Right, trying to prove that this corn silk tufted cheese puff of a man is racist. Unfortunately, it's pretty hard to prove what someone's private feelings and beliefs are. Honestly, I have no idea what's going on in Trump's head. For all I know, it's just a kind of frothy bubbling sound, or like a monkey howling, or crazy circus music. I don't know. I don't know what Trump does at night before he goes to sleep. Maybe he reads Dostoevsky and wonders what the hell he's doing with his life. More likely, he just looks at pictures of his ex-wife. But this is all just speculation. Fortunately, what really matters is not what he personally believes, but what he does and says. But in order to understand that, we have to consider it in the context of American politics and race relations. Now, it's good to keep in mind that 100 years ago, America was so racist that, of the more than 200 anti-lynching bills introduced by Congress, not a single one ever passed the Senate. I bring this up not to suggest that things haven't changed at all, but as a reminder that terribly racist things were once justified using the same kinds of arguments that still appear in today's political discourse. Lynching apologists didn't usually say, I hate the blacks, let's kill them at random to keep them terrorized and in their place. They argued that lynching was a necessary measure to keep black criminality in check, and especially to protect white women from black sexual aggression. Though the latter idea is now pretty disreputable, politicians and pundits still invoke fear of a savage black or brown menace in order to persuade white people to support racist violence. The strategy works because a lot of white Americans have a deep visceral fear of black people and black crime. This is why it's so easy to rationalize to a white audience racist murders or police violence against blacks. All you have to do is show a picture of a scary looking black dude, and a lot of white people get triggered as shit.
Oh my god!
Oh, Jesus.
Oof, wow, you scared us. Oh, not because you're black.
What?
No,
No,
we're not racist.
No, God, no.
It's just that...
That's why in the aftermath of the murders of Trayvon Martin and Michael Brown, there was so much debate over the pictures of the victims displayed by the media. If you show a picture of a black man looking like a thug, a lot of white people immediately conclude that he deserved to die. Now, I'm not saying that it's totally irrational to be afraid of the ghetto. I'm pretty sure everyone is afraid of the ghetto, even black people. I was once trying to sublet my Chicago apartment, and I was turned down by a black woman on the grounds that there were, quote, too many black men standing around in this neighborhood. So it's not that it's wrong to be afraid of the ghetto, it's just that if you allow your fear to get out of control, or allow it to get too general, it can lead you to do and believe insane or irrational things. It's just like any other fear. Even a fear as innocent as arachnophobia can turn a person with no self-control into a raving maniac.
Ah, fuck! Ah, shit! Ah, kill it! Gotta kill it! Kill it! Kill it!
Exploiting the race-based fears of white people to win votes is a long-standing American political tactic known as the Southern Strategy. When overt racist declarations became more disreputable in the 1960s, politicians found more subtle ways of employing the tactic. In an anonymous 1981 interview, Republican strategist Lee Atwater described the strategy in a roundabout way. You start out in 1954 by saying by 1968, you can't say That hurts you. Backfires. So you say stuff like forced busing, states' rights, and all that stuff. You're getting so abstract now that you're talking about cutting taxes, and all these things you're talking about are totally economic things, and a byproduct of them is that blacks get hurt worse than whites. And subconsciously, maybe that is part of it. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying that if it is getting that abstract and that coded, that we are doing away with the racial problem one way or another. You follow me? Because obviously sitting around saying, we want to cut this, is much more abstract than even the busing thing, and a hell of a lot more abstract than This kind of encrypted racism is sometimes called dog whistle politics, since it's abstract enough not to appear overtly racist, but has enough racist overtones to resonate with certain white voters. A classic example is the law and order rhetoric of Goldwater, Nixon, and Reagan, aimed at white fears of ghetto riots and crime. Reagan also conjured up images of Chicago welfare queens in Cadillacs and strapping young bucks buying steaks with food stamps. The implication was that social programs enriched lazy blacks at the expense of hardworking whites. And of course, Sarah Palin's term real America, which refers to white rural America, bears the implication that non-whites are not real Americans. The tactic is typically associated with Republicans, but don't think that Democrats are immune. Hillary Clinton once described urban youth gangs as super predators, while, as Christopher Hitchens often argued, her shitty husband once reveled in the execution of a brain-damaged black man in order to resuscitate his dwindling 1992 campaign and portray himself as tough on blacks, crime. What I'm suggesting is that there's an uninterrupted history of ugly racism in American politics that continues to the present day. So, where does Trump fit into all of this? Well, Trump's conspiracy theorizing about Obama's nationality and the use of phrases like the blacks and the Hispanics looks like classic dog whistling to me. Even his campaign slogan, "Make America Great Again," is designed only to resonate with whites, who are the only demographic that can believe that things aren't better now than they were several decades ago. These little things communicate to racist white people that Trump is one of them, while remaining subtle enough that the charge of racism can be plausibly denied. But more worrying are Trump's more overt signals. When he calls undocumented Mexican immigrants rapists, he's basically one step away from repeating the age-old technique of asking white people, "How would you feel if your lily white daughter were raped by a gang of savage Negroes, eh?" I mean, this isn't even dog whistle politics anymore. He straight up called them rapists. Now you might be thinking, but Mexican is a nationality, not a race. To which I respond that that's a totally pedantic objection, and that the kinds of fears that Trump's rhetoric appeals to don't make these fine distinctions. In a lot of ways, Trump's campaign is more racist than any major presidential candidates in recent history. When the KKK endorsed Ronald Reagan, Reagan wrote in response, "Those of us in public life can only resent the use of our names by those who seek political recognition for the repugnant doctrines of hate they espouse. The politics of racial hatred and religious bigotry practiced by the Klan and others have no place in this country, and are destructive of the values for which America has always stood." Compare this with Trump's response to former Grand Wizard David Duke's endorsement.
Well, just so you understand, I don't know anything about David Duke, okay? I don't know anything about what you're even talking about with white supremacy or white supremacists. So I don't know.
Even if you don't know about their endorsement, there are these groups and individuals endorsing you. Would you just say, unequivocally, you condemn them and you don't want their support?
Well, I have to look at the group. I mean, I don't know what group you're talking about. You wouldn't want me to condemn a group that I know nothing about. I'd have to look. But you may have groups in there that are totally fine, and it would be very unfair. So give me a list of the groups, and I'll let you know.
Okay. I mean, I'm just talking about David Duke and the Ku Klux Klan here, but...
I don't know. Honestly, I don't know David Duke. I don't believe I've ever met him. I'm pretty sure I didn't meet him, and I just don't know anything about him.
Pretty goddamn weak. Now, Trump did disavow the KKK the following day, but only under a lot of pressure. By itself, this apparent reluctance could be interpreted as a fluke, but it happens again and again. When confronted with the news that 2 of his supporters had assaulted a homeless Hispanic man, Trump's response was,
"The people that are following are very passionate. They love this country. They want this country to be great again, and they are very passionate. I will say that."
Yeah, so passionate that they assault minorities and homeless people. You know who else had passionate supporters? And then there's this.
Get rid of all these heebie-jobbies they wear at TSA.
Well,
I've seen them myself.
I understand.
We need the veterans back in there to take it. They've fought for this country and defended it. They'll still do it.
Okay.
Thank you.
You know, and we are looking at that. We're looking at a lot of things.
It's something I'm looking at. I'm looking at a lot of things. Compare Trump's basically affirmative response to a racist supporter with John McCain's handling of a similar situation.
I got to ask you a question. I do not I can't trust Obama. I have read about him, and he's an Arab. He is not. No?
No, ma'am. He's a decent family man, citizen that I just happen to have disagreements with on fundamental issues, and that's what this campaign is all about. He's not. Thank you.
McCain shuts that shit down, while Trump makes sure there's room for it to thrive. He's always winking and nudging at white nationalists. It's no wonder he's the Stormfront candidate of choice, except among the ones who believe that even Trump is a puppet of the Zionist agenda. My main point is that there's a vast reservoir of white racism in America for politicians to draw on for political gain, and it's such an effective strategy that it's hard for them to avoid the temptation. But I think that the situation is getting even worse. After Obama's election, there was a surge of involvement in hate groups and right-wing militias, but this extreme fringe stuff is now starting to seep into mainstream politics, especially into Trump's campaign. Trump is perhaps at his white identity politics worst when he gets nostalgic for the good old days of violence against protesters, and even encourages violence at his own events.
If you see somebody getting ready to throw a tomato, knock the crap out of them, would you? Seriously. Okay? Just knock the hell. I promise you, I will pay for the legal fees, I promise. I love the old days. You know what they used to do to guys like that when they were in a place like this? They'd be carried out on a stretcher, folks. That's true. I'd like to punch him in the face, I'll tell you.
In the good old days, they'd rip him out of that seat so fast. But today, everybody's politically correct. Our country's going to hell with being politically correct. Going to hell.
Get him out of here, please. Get him out. Get him out. Are you from Mexico? Are you from Mexico? Huh?
Now, to be clear, I don't think most of Trump's supporters are violent bigots. A lot of them are basically decent people, like Charlene, the cashier at my local 7-Eleven. She's having a tough time financially, and her son is addicted to meth, and she herself occasionally likes to get tweaked as fuck. God damn it, Trump. Stop using racist nonsense to manipulate Charlene's brain. To return to the initial question, is Trump racist? Ultimately, the most damning thing might be the fact that Stormfront neo-Nazis think that Trump is trying to appeal to them with racist rhetoric. If you're not being kinda racist, that's not a thing that neo-Nazis should think. So I guess, yeah, that does make him pretty racist. The goddamn orangey? I'm just about sick of his goddamn orangey-loving followers and— oh jeez, is that racist? Oh no, I am the real racist. Fuck! If you liked this video, please like, comment, and subscribe. Also, follow my new Twitch account if you're interested in watching live broadcasts. If you'd like to see more videos like this, consider supporting me on Patreon. Speaking of Patreon, I'd like to say thank you to my first 15 noble patrons. Patreon doesn't charge you till the end of the month, so I'll be including you in the credits starting in August. If you've pledged $5 or more, let me know on Patreon if you'd like me to use a different name in the credits than your Patreon name. And starting next month, you'll also have access to behind-the-scenes material and outtakes, like this.
Fuck.